Hi folks, I just wanted to do a quick video to talk about this air compressor I purchased a few years back. It's made by California Air Tools. It's an ultra quiet and it's a upright 20-gallon. You can see the model 10020C, 20-gallon. There's two connections here. It is really quiet, or it was. It's really quiet now because it's not running. But anyway, a little bit of background on this compressor. I bought it so I could connect my spray gun to it and redo a top of a camper with basically some bed liner material. So it was a little pop-up camper, and so I sprayed it. I probably had maybe 2 hours of run time on the compressor. Then this compressor is stored in my garage here, and I used it, once maybe every couple months, put some air in the tires or something like that. So then I had this compressor about a year and a half, and it had probably about 15 to 18 hours of run time on the unit total. And that's probably being generous. It probably actually had less than that. So anyway, I was defrosting my upright freezer out in the garage, and there was a lot of water droplets in the freezer, and I just wanted to kind of blow them out, help blow some of the water that was, as the thing was defrosting. And I used this air compressor, and I had a little air nozzle on it, and it was sitting there running. And I just happened to be looking at the compressor at the right moment, and it just shot out sparks and flames out of the motor. Tripped a circuit breaker. I seen a little bit of flames burn down, and then it died. Flames shot out around here and through the vents on this side right here, just kind of shot out. So I called the manufacturer and explained to them what happened, and tried to do an exchange maybe on this unit if I could take it off. And long story short is they would sell me another one of these compressor units because there's only a 1-year warranty on this unit. But that was it, and I would end up paying about the same, or about $20 less than what I paid for this whole compressor just to buy this one unit. And I said, well, can I send this back as a core charge, as a core? Because as a company, you might want to know why it failed. Why did it abruptly fail like that with less than, 15 hours of runtime on it? Maybe you want to know. And they didn't. They didn't really seem like they cared. And they would happily sell me a new one of these, but really didn't care why it failed, and it was out of warranty, and it probably had moisture in it, is what the guy on the phone said. So I stuck it in the corner of my garage, my messy garage, and I said I'm gonna take it apart and figure out why it died. And so I did some disassembly, and I figured I'd go ahead and make the video. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this unit off, this compressing unit from the compressor unit, from the whole body, which entails taking this one screw out here, Phillips screw, disconnecting the 3 wires that's in there. I've already done that, and I've pulled them out. I'll pull them out. Just kind of wanted to walk you through it, what I'm doing here. Just feed this wire through. There it is. Drop my strain relief. That's fine. Okay. So then this line right here has to come loose. I've already loosened it up, so I can take it off by hand now. There we go. Well, this is going to be a fast disassembly, isn't it? All right, and then on this side, right here, you got your startup cap, and there's two socket head cap screws that are 5mm. I've already loosened them up. I'm just going to take those out. And then this starter cap is going to lift right off. Alright, there we go. So that's off. Then there's 4 screws under here, 13mm. And you can take those off, nuts. You take these 4 off, 2 here and 2 on this side. You take those off, and then this whole unit will lift off and it's detached. And so let me go ahead and do that and lift it off and put it on the bench. Okay, I've got the unit on the bench. There's a starter cap, and this is basically the motor right here, and it's got a shaft coming out both ends, both sides of the motor, and they've got a piston, dual piston. And there's the power cable that goes in. So there's 2 Phillips screws here and here that need to come out. I've already removed those. And then this cap pulls off. And you've got your cooling fan. It took me a while to figure out how to take all this stuff apart. There was no documentation that I could find or videos. Anyway, so this shaft, I didn't want to break anything. This fan blade just pressed onto this shaft, and if you look, it's like a little D-shaped. Now that it's off, you can see it. There's the flat right here, and it's round, and then here's your shaft, and it's just basically pressed on, so you just pull it right off. Just be careful you don't break any fins or anything like that. And that off to the side, and now we're looking at the internals. And what I discovered in here is that this was a craftsmanship defect. Yes, craftsmanship. And California Air Tools did not want to know the nature of the failure, the mode of the failure. If it was craftsmanship, it was an abrupt failure from a component going out, it just really didn't care. And so maybe I got a bum air compressor, one that whoever was assembling it was doing a sloppy job, but I'll show you exactly what happened. So when this thing's running, this motor spins around, the shaft spins around. You can see that little, almost like a car engine. You can see that piston going up and down, right? And what happened is, if you look over here at this black wire, get some light in there. You see what happened there? See where it just failed? So that black wire was sticking out. This is exactly how I found it. So while this, I don't know if you can see that. While this compressor is running, watch what happens here. It comes around and strikes that wire. Boom. 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 And over time, what it's going to do is it's going to wear right through that insulation. And that's exactly what happened. And your black wire, that's your hot wire. So when that thing came around and it finally rubbed through, you can see right there, let me get something to point, right here you can see that wire and this edge of that connecting rod for that piston rubbing, and it broke through and it arced because there's a little bit of melted, you can see where an arc, anybody familiar with shorts understands what's left behind. So it shorted out, and basically all that copper melted. That's where all my sparks came from, flying out these little holes and things, and out the fan blowing it out. So that's what happened. So now I can't figure out how to get this guy out so I can get this whole end off and exposed to it. So what's happening is this power line is coming in, comes in right here. It's connected to the coils, and then your hot line just jumpers right through, comes back out, goes through this cap, comes back on the white wire, and comes in here, and is connected to the coils. So I'm hoping there's no damage to the coils. I'll have to check that and see, but I'm gonna see if I can do some surgery on this thing, maybe repair that hot wire, maybe replace this cable. We'll see. But another thing that concerns me is this piece right here is cast. This is cast aluminum, so there's sharp edges, you know, from the casting. You can feel them up in here. And look, they've got these wires pressed right up against that sharp edge. So what's going to happen over time is that one is going to probably cut through and connect to the case. All right, so that's not good. So I want to try to fix all that, get these wires pushed away and tucked out of the way. And if whoever was assembling this thing, if they'd have taken these wires and pushed them back, way back into this little cavity, and maybe tied them with some of this cable lace that you see in here, then it wouldn't have been striking a moving part and cause that failure. But you can see that's just, it's pretty sad, the craftsmanship, and that was allowed to happen like that. And I did see a video, a YouTube video. Another person had a similar thing, and he almost had a garage fire. His whole thing melted down. So I'm thinking it's probably the same thing. Is it design? It's tight in there. It should work if you build it right, and this one unfortunately was not built right. So we'll see if we can rectify that and get this thing going again. Okay, so we had to remove this counterbalance and bearing assembly, and we did that by coming in the side here, right here, and loosening this clamp bolt around the connecting rod, which loosened it off this bearing here. There's also a couple set screws right in here that you have to loosen, take out. Then I put a pair of pliers on the shaft, held it, wiggled it back and forth so I could get it off. And then I noticed some more damage from the short. You can see here the wire is totally severed, the black wire. Here's where the event occurred, and now this bearing feels very rough, so that bearing's going to have to be replaced. So probably some of the rollers inside deformed when that short occurred. So alright, I've just loosened all 4 of these bolts holding the 2 halves together. So I believe this might just be in with O-rings here. I'm hopeful that I'll just be able to separate this whole half off, but I see I got another bearing in here and it may be pressed on, so it may be a little bit difficult. But okay, once all these long screws were taken out, I thought this cover would lift right off, but it doesn't. So the next thing was, how do I get this shroud off? And I didn't quite understand how to do that. It wouldn't tap off. I couldn't do anything. But you see there's a bearing that's pressed in there. So what I ended up doing was I took this puller right here, got me some long bolts that, if you look here, I flattened on the sander, kind of made little flats, And what that did, allowed me to do, is I could put this on here in the center, slip these bolts down through here, give it a half turn, not a half turn, but a quarter turn, and then it would catch. And do the same thing over here with the other one. Crank this guy, and it pulled that whole shroud right off. So, alright, so once the shroud came off, it exposed the damage right there. Alright, you can see the wire. So, got to cut this lacing back. That's a Kevlar braided twine, which I've ordered some more. And I'll cut that back. Cut this wire. And use a crimp terminal. My bench is extremely messy. I got stuff everywhere, but I'll use one of these. Got these on Amazon. So I'll get a good mechanical crimp, and I'll probably solder it as well. Get a good bond, and then I'll heat shrink it and put one of these fiberglass sleeves over it, much like these right here, and then tie it back up nice and tight, and we'll see if it works. Okay, stripped the wires, cleaned it up, crimped this little barrel on there. I got some heat shrink under here, and also that fiberglass wrap. We're going to heat it up, put a little touch of solder on there just to get a good bond. It still has the mechanical clamping from crimping of the barrel, but I just want to make a good electrical connection. Alright, I keep forgetting to document this as I go along. I'm tying up the windings. I've already got that soldered, got some heat shrink on there. Got this new fiberglass tube, and I'm going to tie up the windings best I can and put this motor back together and power it up. I had continuity through the windings, so we'll see if it works. And if it does, I'll order this new bearing here and get my compressor back running again. Okay, I've got it all tied back up. My tying is a little bit different than the factory tying. I just sort of made up some tying, but as long as the windings are tight, it's not going to get loose. It's going to hold all the wires in place. I think it's fine. So let me put this cover, put it back together, and then I'll check the cap, make sure that's still good, and we'll put some power to it and see if it's going to spin up. Okay, so I've got the motor back together, not all the way, but just this far, and you can see how tight it is. The casing's touching on windings and stuff like that. It's just very tight tolerances, poor craftsmanship. I don't have my strain reliefs in here yet. I just want to see if it's going to work. Cap tested out okay, starter cap. So I'm just going to plug it in, and if the motor spins, then I'll dress it up and put it back together and have my compressor working again. So let's see. Hopefully it won't blow up. Here we go. Success! it works. So let me put it back together and assemble it, and then we'll test it to make air. Okay, my new bearing came today. Again, here's the old bearing, which is, you can see the electrical damage, the discharge, and it's very rough as you spin it around right there. It even hangs a little. Here's a new one, SKF, made in France, out of 1045 steel. Very smooth, very nice. So this is the one I'll be putting in and get my compressor going again. Okay, I've got the bearing pressed on. There's the new bearing. It's been so long since I took this apart, it's kind of, I'm having to remember how it goes back together. But this is going to have to slide onto the shaft. There's a set key right here, which you can see there's a witness mark where it locked down before. But prior to putting this little orbital thing on, I need to install the piston. That's the only way that I can get it on here. So what I'll do is do it just like this, and then it'll rest there, and then clamp on after I slide this on. So let me do that and keep moving forward. Okay, I've got it slid back on, and I can still move it in and out, and this is gonna I'm gonna have to put more together, put the head back on it, because there's an alignment issue. This thing needs to be perfectly centered, so I need to do that first. And another thing to keep in mind is if you take this piston out, you see this little small indentation here. Well, that coincides with the screw on the inside of the head, the compressor head, right here. So you want to make sure you get that on there right, because if I had this thing turned around, if I had the piston turned around 180 degrees, when it came on the upstroke, the screw would hit that piston. It'd probably lock up tight, and cause damage. So just make sure, be mindful of that. And let me continue putting this thing together. Alright, so I'm tightening the rod. It clamps around that bearing I just put in there, and then the whole assembly will still slide in and out, and it should center itself. Anyway, that's the theory. So you get this nice and tight. Yeah, okay. Now this still goes in and out. You can see a little bit of play. I want to make sure I get the right position on that. I've got the cylinder sleeve. It fits down in there, and I'll bolt the head down. So I think that's going to be pretty good. And this guy's going to spin around. Oop. Anyway, yeah, I just got out of alignment. Okay, I've rotated the shaft so that the flat is at the 3 o'clock position, which allows me to slide my Allen key in through there to tighten the set screw. But before I tighten that down, because I want to make sure the alignment's proper, I'm going to install the head. Put these tubes in here. I really should get a tripod. Looking good so far. Got the head all tightened up, so that was real quick to get back together. Actually, the whole thing's not been that difficult to get back together. Now, what I want to do is, you can see as I push this in and out, there's a little bit of play. So I kind of just want to do it by hand and split the difference kind of right in the middle, and then lock this thing down. I think that'll be about the best fit. And then I'll lock this down really good, install the second set screw that goes in here and jams up against it. It's like a jam screw, I guess you could call it. And we're almost there. Got it locked down tight. Now here's my second set screw, jam screw if you want to call it, so that the other one doesn't loosen up. And I'll just run that one all the way down and tighten it up, and we're ready to continue. Alright. Okay, I've just installed the strain relief on the electrical cords. And if we look inside, previously the defect was that this the line here, the hot side, was excessively long, and it extended beyond here. You can see where the debris and discoloration from the short. So as this rotated around, it would hit the wire until it eventually broke through the insulation and shorted out. And as you can see, it's still a tight fit. Everything's tight in here, but I've got plenty of clearance on my wires, and they're tight. They're not going anywhere. The strain relief is tight, and so everything's tight. And I'll put the fans on. I'll put the covers on. Put this back on top of the compressor, and we'll go from there. Compressor frame is fully assembled now and ready to bolt back on to the tank. So got the electrical tied back in. Starting cap is in place, and now the last thing I am doing, make sure that little gasket's in there, is installing the air line. It goes to the compressor head. Okay, here it is, all plugged in. And now for the moment of truth. Is it going to work? Let's see. Success. See if the pressure builds up. You can hear it is a quiet compressor. Pressure is building up, but it is still bleeding out the top. Not sure what that's about. Oh, there it goes. I'm going to call that a win. So bottom line is the compressor was defective. It took about 5 hours of runtime for the defect to materialize and show itself. Customer service was not real responsive. They just wanted to disavow anything towards this compressor. Not very helpful at all. And they basically were saying, well, maybe I didn't store it properly, that it was in a damp or dirty environment, and I tried to explain to them that's not the case, but they didn't want to receive the unit back, or at least the compressor head assembly, to do a fault analysis on it to figure out why did it fail. Me personally, I would want to know why it failed and possibly prevent that from happening in the future. I did look online and see that other compressor owners had the same issue where their compressor actually caught on fire. And I assume it was probably the same thing. It shorted out and caught fire. Mine almost caught fire. I was lucky. Happened to be there. And anyway, it looks like it's working good now. Hopefully it's going to shut off soon. There it is. So it's working.